Okay, good afternoon and welcome all to this 2022 citation ceremony for the award of honorary membership of the African Theatre Association. We're so glad you could join us. We had about 100 people register online to join this event, and I'm grateful to everyone who's registered and who's joined us this evening. Before we start, just want to remind everyone, please, if you're not speaking, because we're using the normal Zoom app, not the one for meeting. We're using the one for the meetings. So if you please not speaking, keep your microphones muted until you're going to speak. As you can see from the schedule there, I'm going to give a very quick welcome and then hand over to our first orator, Dr. Tosin Tume. And then after Tosin has read the citation for Professor Yvette Hutchison, we'll invite Professor to make a response, and so on and so forth. And at the end, we'll just have a quick welcome to all our new honorary members. I'm glad to see some of our honorary members from the previous years here on the call. Thank you so much for joining us to witness this occasion. I'm going to stop sharing the slides that's going on right now and go on to the slide, to the introductory slides for welcome. So please do bear with me. All right, so welcome once again, everyone. So glad to see everyone, and it's really good to see so many faces on here. I noticed some people are also watching on our YouTube account. So for those of you watching on YouTube, welcome. So this is a brief introduction about the African Theatre Association that I usually do at these events. My name is Professor Kene Iguano. I'm the president of the African Theatre Association, and my day job is as Pro Vice Chancellor and Head of College at the University of the Arts, London. So to start with, the African Theatre Association is an international membership organization. It's open to scholars, practitioners of African theatre and performance, or as I like to say, it is open to all Africanists. It started in 2006 with Professor Osita Okabwe of Goldsmith University as the founding president. His tenure was followed by Professor Sam Kasule of the University of Derby, and I'm the third president of the association. The mission of the association is to help define and shape African theatre scholarship and pedagogy by liberating it from a bondage to non-Western discursive frameworks. AfTA facilitates the exploration and communication of African theatre and performance through its conferences, events, and publications. And it provides a regular forum for scholars and practitioners to exchange ideas and knowledge, and as well as information. In terms of governance, the association is governed by its constitution and bylaws, and the constitution was last amended in 2018. The governance lies with the Executive Board and the General Assembly, which is the highest decision-making body of the association. The current membership of the Executive Board are myself as president. You can see that the slides haven't been updated. Vice President is Professor Charles Nwadigwe. General Secretary, Dr. Tiziana Marosetti of Goldsmith University. Treasurer is Dr. Dipo Agboloaje, and Membership Secretary is Professor Dr. Annette Bola-Dietrich. These are the 5 executive officers, and we have a number of other officers of the association who are supporting the administration and leadership. And as you can see, there are quite a few people there. Membership of the AfTA is open to every Africanist, whether you're academic, a researcher, practitioner, or students, provided you have an interest in the study, practice, or promotion of African theatre and performance. Our membership span the globe. Most of our members do come from the African continent. We have members in Europe, America, South America, the Caribbean, And by virtue of the AfTA's constitution, we consider the Caribbean Africa. So our members from the continent, African continent, and those from the Caribbean do pay the same membership rate, which is a reduced rate compared to those in the global north. Members receive a copy of the journal, the African Performance Review. At the moment, we are transitioning that journal into an online journal, and that process is still ongoing. Our membership year runs from January to December, and you can see the subscription rate there, which again is available on the website of the association. AfTA started in 2006, like I said, with an inaugural symposium. That was on the 8th of April, 2006. The inaugural symposium was titled Women in African Performance and Theatre. It was hosted by the Painter Center for Performance and Creative Writing at the Department of Theatre, now Department of Theatre, Drama and Theatre at University of London Goldsmiths. Following that, I'm not going to read out each of these, but following this, what you notice is that AfTA has been having the annual conferences every year, except 2008, when there was no conference. So the first international conference was held in 2007. Following the symposium, it was also held at Goldsmiths. And one of the principles of our AfTA conferences is that we have a rotational format where AfTA conference is held in the global north in 1 year and then comes to Africa or the Caribbean in the following year. So you can see there that it's moved between, for example, Goldsmiths in the UK, Northampton in 2019 to Uganda in 2010. And the last conference was also held in Uganda in 2022. These are some of the themes of the conferences. So in 2007, we looked at critical perspectives in African theatre and performance. And in 2022, which is last year, we looked at voyages in post-colonial African and African diasporic theatre and performance. And this information, by the way, is available on our website. In 2023, next year, the AfTA conference will come back to the UK, and it will be hosted by the Department of Drama, Theatre and Dance at Royal Holloway, University of London. It will be held from the 31st of July to the 2nd of August. And the theme for the 2023 conference is Performing Political Activism, Radical Justice, Social Justice, and Environmental Justice. And the call for paper for this conference is currently open. So if you'd like to participate in the conference, I encourage you to go onto the African Theatre website, which is african-theatre.org. If you go onto the website, you'll be able to see the full call for paper and apply, submit your proposal for the conference. I mentioned the journal of the association, which is called African Performance Review. The journal is a peer-reviewed publication of the association, and it's published twice yearly. It is dedicated to publishing, disseminating, and encouraging high-quality research on theatres and performance in Africa and the diaspora. It was launched in 2007. So following the symposium in 2006, the journal was launched in 2007 with a special issue on women in African theatre and performance, which, as you recall, was the theme of the inaugural symposium of the association. And one of the things we encourage out of the conferences are publications that either special issues in the journal, which we've had in some of the other conferences, or special edited collection. So these 3 books were published when I first hosted the conference in 2010-11. And these 3 books, Performative Interactions in African Theatre, was published following that conference. And I know that there's work ongoing on publication for the last conference in Uganda. So thank you very much. This is a picture from 2018. I'm going to stop sharing screen now, and I'm going to invite Dr. Tosin Tume to get ready for the citation. Dr. Tosin Tume. If you give me a minute to spotlight you and our honoree. Tosin, you are muted. So you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you, Kenneth. Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today to read the citation for Professor Yvette Hutchison. Professor Yvette Hutchison is an Africanist theater scholar in the Theater and Performance Studies part of the School of Creative Arts, Performance and Visual Cultures at the University of Warwick, UK, where she's currently Director of Research for the school. Yvette did her BA honors at the then named University of KwaZulu-Natal, Durban, in drama, majoring in English, Afrikaans, Netherlands, and drama. Then she did honors in English. She then went to the University of Stellenbosch, where she did an MA by research on the real thing in the works of Tom Stoppard, 1966 to 1988 in 1991. During this time, Yvette worked as a research assistant to Professor Temple Upledge in the drama department at the University of Stellenbosch on the South African Theatre Journal. She was the South African correspondent for the International Bibliography of Theatre Research, NY, from 1989 to 1996. She coordinated various grassroots theatre for development projects and contributed to Upledge's Companion to South African Theatre, now set up online as ESAT, a rich resource for research on South African theatre. Her shift in research to theatre in the wider African context came in the early 1990s when she was teaching at the University of the Western Cape, where she met the Nigerian academic and writer, Professor Kole Omotosho. His generous sharing of his own theatre experiences and personal library opened up theatre context of the African continent to Yvette. He generously worked with her to edit 1995 Open Space, An Introduction to African Drama, a collection of 6 plays for various parts of Africa, published by Kagiso. This was the beginning of her quest to access and make available diverse texts by African playwrights. It also inspired her deep field research for her thesis, Memory is a Weapon, a comparative study of history and myth in post-1960 Kenyan, Nigerian, and South African drama, which was supported by generous and experienced scholars. Professor Upledge at Stellenbosch and Professor Eckhard Brittinger at the Institute of African Studies at the University of Beirut on a DAAD scholarship. From her doctoral research, Yvette has expanded her analysis of the relationship between history, memory, and conflict resolution through her monograph, South African Performance and Archives of Memory, which was published by Manchester University Press in 2013. As the culmination of her level home project, Performing Memory, Theatricalizing Identity in Contemporary South Africa. Since then, she has co-edited many books, chapters in edited collections, articles, and conference papers on various aspects of theater in the African context and intercultural performance practices. Our ongoing commitment to expanding African research is evidenced in her work on the editorial boards for the South African Theatre Journal, Performing Ethos, and AfTA's own African Performance Review journals. She was privileged to work with Martin Burnham, James Gibbs, Jane Plastow, and Femi Osofisan on the African Theatre series, published by James Curry from 2010 until the series ended in 2021. During this time, she co-edited African Theatre 17, Contemporary Dance in 2018 with Chukwuma Okoye, African Theatre 14, Contemporary Women in 2015 with Jane Plastow and Christine Matzke, and edited African Theatre 9, Histories 1850 and 1950 in 2010. In 2015, following our work on African Theatre 14, Contemporary Women, Yvette shifted her work to consider and address the invisibility of contemporary African women in published works, festivals, and curricula on the continent and beyond. Working with South African writer Amy Jefter, and Everyone Mobile, EIM, a South African UK IT company. She co-founded the African Women Playwrights Network, AWPN, to open up new ways for African women artists to engage one another, the creative industries, and researchers. The organization has grown to the point that it has its own steering committee. It has run its first festival of new works at the University of Ghana in 2022. It has gained donor support for a writer in residence, and it is about to fly as it is reconstituted from a network to an organization in its own right. Yvette's current new projects, Disability, Dance, and Citizenship in Africa, Intersectional Global Asymmetries, is with Dr. Lynn Lutz of University of KwaZulu. They will be working with integrate dancers in a number of African countries to explore conceptual and methodological innovations for widening understandings of citizenship and thus inclusion for disabled persons in Africa. Yvette remains fully committed to expanding awareness of the amazing work being done on the continent, and as such has been a proud member of AfTA almost from its beginnings. Thank you.
Thank you. And we now invite Professor Yvette Hutchison to make a response.
Hutchison, thank you very much for that lovely citation. Also to Kene and to AfTA, the executive, for this honorary membership that gives me the opportunity to thank so many people for their support over the years, both personal and professional. And of course, I have to start with my lovely family that have always believed in me and encouraged me to do what I want to do. And especially Mike, my husband, who uncomplainingly travels with me and supports me in the work that I want to do. Friends who've remained joyful with me, and colleagues who give me supportive criticism that help me to grow while they cheer me on. And especially my colleagues at the University of Warwick that have supported me in the UK in the last 16 years. But I've been asked here to focus on advice that I might give to up-and-coming Africanist scholars or practitioners in my field. And I want to start by challenging what is often a competitive spirit and really encourage the adoption of the spirit of Ubuntu. I am because all of us are who we are. I'm here today because you walked with me and you invited me to walk with you. On this journey, I've had lots of support from incredible souls who made space for me within my own ability. This was true when I started out at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and wanted to do drama as a disabled student, which was very difficult with the current curriculum, but they found a way. When I went to Stellenbosch, Professor Temple Hauptflash not only mentored me in my research, but he used his own personal funds to help me attend my first international conference where I met Eckhard Breitinger, who found a way to get me a scholarship to do my PhD with him at the African Institute. And he and men like Kole Omatosho and David Kerr filled in the gaps for my education in South Africa, where I hadn't read much African theory and I hadn't been able to access many texts. So I had a really odd and skewed education when I started my PhD. These people have made space for me, but also opened up their personal libraries and their own experiences. As you've also heard, people working on the African theatre series like Martin, James, Jane, and Femi, two of whom are with me today, I'm very grateful for, gave me an intellectual home where I could continue to contribute to development of African theatre here in the UK. From this, I learned that we must be the peers and the mentors that we would like for ourselves. To be enthusiastic and generous with our time, knowledge, and resources, but also to be willing to not know, to be silent, to listen, and to learn. I've mentioned many men who've supported me in my work, but they've also been incredible women, both lecturers and peers, people like Christine Matska, Leanne Lewitz, and Nadine Holsworth, who not only work with me, but continue to walk with me as I learn. Bell Hooks has argued that one of the most vital ways that we sustain ourselves is by building communities of resistance, places where we know we are not alone. And this truth has come to me, particularly through the African Women's Playwright Network, the project through which I think I've learned and grown the most. When Jane and Christine and I were working on Contemporary Women in 2014, we saw how incredible the number of women creators on the continent were, but how underrepresented they were in publications, festivals, and curricula. So this provided a new challenge for me. And it was a challenge because when Amy Jector suggested that we create this network through an online application, I didn't know what an application was. Never mind how to actually build wireframes. But I learned how apps worked, how social media worked, how to create communities on and offline, how to build such communities for research purposes. And I learned it from the women themselves, from working with people like JC Nyala, from the steering committee, Tosin Tume, Feliswe Twain-Stra, and Yo Kibetsiwe, and at the moment from the artist in residence with me, Gertrude Vimbai Munhamo. These women actively have taught me that artists think differently from researchers. And this has shifted the questions I ask and the answers that I get, which has expanded my research. I often still feel out of depth and out of control. And this, I think, is an important part of research. So my mantra for research that I've taken from the 19th century explorer, Sir Richard Francis Burton, who, while preparing for an exploration of the Lower Congo in 1863, wrote the following to his friend Monckton Milnes from the African kingdom of Dahomey. He said, starting in a hollowed out log of wood, some 1,000 miles up a river, with an infinitesimal prospect of returning, I asked myself why. And the only echo is, damn fool, the devil drives. May you, like me, be driven by the thirst to explore unknown intellectual territories, even if you have no idea where you're going or how you're going to get back. Take good people with you and be willing to trust them and learn from them. Share the knowledge and skills that you have and enjoy the mad ride that is provoked by critical and creative explorations that are research. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. We're going to acknowledge all our honorees at the end, but thank you so much for that wonderful advice. I'm going to invite Professor Dr. Annette Buladutrich, who is going to be reading the citation for Professor Khalid. Amine.
So I feel very honored to read the citation for Professor Khalid Amine this afternoon. Khalid Amine is Senior Professor of Performance Studies at the Faculty of Letters and Humanities at Abdelmalek Essaadi University, Tétouan, Morocco. He has been Research Fellow at the International Research Center Interweaving Performance Cultures at Freie Universität Berlin, and is now member of the advisory board there. He's the winner of the 2007 Helsinki Prize of the International Federation for Theatre Research. He was Friedrich Hölderlin Guest Professor at Goethe University Frankfurt am Main in Germany in 2017-18. And since 2007, he has been founding president of the International Center for Performance Studies in Tangier and convener of its annual international conferences. The 18th edition of Performing Tangier Festival and International Conference, with this year's topic, the performing body, has begun on November 26. And we're especially grateful to Professor Amine that he found time to attend the honorary membership ceremony nevertheless. Professor Amine was member of AfTA Executive Committee from 2011 to 2018. He was head of jury at the Arab Theatre Festival, the 6th edition in 2014, and advisor at Saudi National Theatre from 2020 to 2023. Professor Amine's recent publication, Across Borders and Thresholds, Performing in Zones of Contact and Friction, 2020, co-edited with Jamal Akrabli, gestures towards Amine's focus on contact and friction in performance studies. Between his first monograph, Beyond Brecht, in 1996, the second book, Moroccan Theatre Between East and West, in 2000, and the recent 2019 monograph, Dancing on the Hyphen, Essays on Arab Theatre, his thinking focuses on the zone of the in-between and the hyphen. His collaboration with distinguished Professor Marvin Carlson in The Theatres of Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, Performance Traditions of the Maghreb in 2012, revisits performance traditions from a position of dialogue between North and South. Silence, origin, memory, and intermediality are further topics Professor Amine addresses in his monographs and edited volumes published during the last 2 decades. The African Theatre Association is indebted to a notion of Africa which comprises the entire continent. It is therefore delighted to confer the honorary membership on Professor Khalid Amine. We honor a scholar dedicated to in-depth scholarly discussion, as well as to the facilitation of theatre and performance events. The currently ongoing Performing Tangier Festival and Conference testifies to both. We're looking forward to interweaving theatre and performance practices, north and south of the Sahara, together in the future. Congratulations, Professor Amine.
Thank you. We invite Professor Khalid Amine to make his response, please.
Thank you so much, Annette, for your generosity of spirit, your wonderful introduction. I really feel humbled by your nice words. Thank you so much, Mr. President of the African Theatre Association and all the board. I feel really honored by this citation. Honestly, I just came back from a panel, and also I have to run another panel where we are having Richard Schechner online to speak about a most recent project, which is Drama Review in Arabic. And maybe I would like to leave this till the end. So first of all, yeah, as you all know, I'm from Morocco. I teach at Abdelmalek Essaadi, and this is where I started as a student, and this is where I founded, my research group along with my colleagues. So deep thanks and gratitude to all my friends and colleagues at Abdelmalek Essaadi University, and also at the International Center for Performance Studies in Tangier, which is an extension of this research group, at the university. Many thanks also go to, our interweaving family, and I can see Femi with you as well, yeah, I mean, Erika Fischer-Lichter and many of our friends at the Freie Universität gave us the opportunity to establish real contacts with, theatre scholars and practitioners from different parts of the world. Many thanks also to our colleagues at the International Federation for Theatre Research, and of course in Stellenbosch. Stellenbosch actually in 2007 was a real opportunity for us all, to implement first, the Arabic theatre working group, but also to have connections with the African theatre groups, etc. So, yeah, I'm running and convening this conference, which is an international conference in Tangier called International Performing Tangier, and this is our 18th edition. Just last year, we debated the issue of the theatres of the Global South, and among the conclusions is that we really need a real dialogue between South and South. And this is where I'm really happy, to be part of the African Theatre Association, because there is a lot to do, and especially when it comes to decolonial perspectives, but working together, establishing real connections and networking and interweaving together. And I'm ready, to organize in the future any of your upcoming encounters right here in Tangier. So Tangier is located precisely at the tip top of Africa, as you all know, which is a very, open city. It's a crossroads city, and that's why, I can see from my window, the nearest city from Spain, which is Tarifa. I can see it from my window, 10 miles away from me. And the Strait of Gibraltar, it used to be like a little street in the past, where the crossing ups and down is taking place all the time. But of course, there is a divide between here and there. And of course, this divide, due to the history of the city, due to the history of the two banks of the Mediterranean Sea, the north and southern bank. So I feel very much in Tangier as a Tanjawi, as a Moroccan, but I feel like, deeply rooted in Africa, with connections and of course, interweavings also in the Middle East and with the Amazigh, roots in North Africa, but very much deeply rooted in the sub-Saharan Africa. So part of me and part of my blood is really about that. So, and that's why I see that, we need to retrieve, and to, let's say, bring together, all these forums to have real, conversations in the future. Speaking about, the 18 editions of the past, the theaters of the Global South was one of them, and today we're debating, from 26 up till 28, we're debating, another issue, the performing body, and tonight we have like a panel with Richard Checkner to translate, we already did the translation of the TDR in Arabic. So we are selecting, articles from TDR, and then we are providing, the Arab, the readers with, let's say the translation. Among the first among the first questions posed in the first issue is an issue related to, is performance studies imperialists? And that was already a question put on the table by John McKenzie, Janiel, and many others. And also we have this very interesting conversation about, the use of English as a lingua franca. Is English, informing or deforming performance studies, etc.? Why should we translate and things like this? So there is quite a conversation that we will have, in I think half an hour from now, with Richard Checkner. He's now in Sharm el-Sheikh in another Arab festival, but he will be online with us. So this just briefly to tell you about what we are doing in Tangier, and you are very welcome in the future. We are ready, to host one of your conferences right here in this city, which is really at the crossroads of two different maybe worlds, Africa and Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Khalid. Thank you. I'm going to invite Dr. Oladipo Agboluaje, who is going to be reading the citation for Emeritus Professor Femi Osofisan.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. It's showing that you're muted, but it looks like you can speak. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Really gives me great honor to be the person reading the citation for Professor Femi Osofisan. I was privileged to be in a seminal show of his at the University of Benin, I think in 1986. It was a production of his adaptation of is it Hotel Paradiso? I think it was Midnight Hotel, where I played the headmaster Latiche. So I say to those of us who are familiar with the play, Etiro, before I begin. Anyway, Professor Babafemi Adeyemi Osofisan, aka Okinbalanko, is a Nigerian playwright, poet, novelist, essayist, critic, journalist, and academic. He is often cited as the foremost intertextual writer in Africa. Professor Osofisan taught theatre arts at the University of Ibadan, where he became a professor in 1983. He has served as visiting professor at the University of Benin, Nigeria, Kwara State University, Nigeria, University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria, and other universities in Colombo, in Sri Lanka, in Beijing, Winchester, UK, York, Canada, and Evanston in the United States. He has published over 70 plays, including The Chattering and the Song, Issue and the Vagabond Minstrels, Morong Tudun, Once Upon Four Robbers, Twingle Twangle, Who's Afraid of Shularin, including its Yoruba version, Yoruba Shularin Bo, Arigidi and the Night Watchman, Bishop Ajayi Crowder, Nkrumani, Africani, Real, Rwanda, Midnight Hotel, and Medai. He has also written 5 novellas, Cholera College, Mami, now a film with the same title, Cordelia, also a film, Wurola Forever, and Pirates of Hurt. Professor Osofisan has also written 6 volumes of poetry, Minted Coins, Irini, Dream Seeker on a Divining Chain, Pain Remembers, Love Rekindles, Commemorations, and 7 Stations Up the Trey's Way. He's also the author of the biography of the acclaimed poet and playwright, John P. Clark Beckerderemo, entitled J.P. Clark, A Voyage, as well as Gamaliel Nosode Classicus, An Honorable Life, on the life of the late Nigerian industrialist. Professor Osofisan. Sorry, not sure where that's coming from. Okay, it's gone. Professor Osofisan formed Cacao Seller Company in 1971 to produce theatre that invokes African performance culture, as well as question popular and social-political issues. In the 1970s, he created, along with writer Koleo Motosho and playwright Bode Showande, Complex Artists, as a think tank on the dramaturgical process of African plays and a forum to discuss development of novels and poetry for a post-colonial universe. To popularize and archive the productions, he established Okmoifa Poetry Chapbook, now called Okmoifa Review. Okmoifa Review also produces and publishes plays and performances as Okmoifa Readers. Professor Osofisan served as the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of the National Theatre, Gomu, Lagos, and from 2000 to 2012 was Executive Consultant of the Chams Theatre Project. He is the former President of the Association of Nigerian Authors, ANA, former President of the International PEN, Nigeria Chapter, Vice President of the Pan-African Writers Association. He is member of the board of the International Research Center, Interweaving Performance Cultures at Freie University in Berlin. Since 2013, biennially, he has convened the only playwrights confab in Nigeria. Professor Osofisan was honored with the French National Order of Merit in 1991, University of Ibadan Faculty of Arts Distinguished Alumnus Award in 2001, the Nigerian National Order of Merit Award, which is the highest award for Nigerian academics, in 2004, and the prestigious Fonlon Nichols Award in 2005. A year later, in 2006, he became a fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Letters, and in 2016 was honored as one of the 6 leading icons of the theatre world at the Cairo International Festival of Contemporary and Experimental Theatre. That same year, Professor Osofisan became the first African laureate of the Thalia Prize of the International Association of Theatre Critics. Professor Osofisan is an advisory board member of the Interweaving Performance Cultures International Research Center, Freie University in Germany. In 2014, Professor Osofisan was appointed Emeritus Professor at the University of Ibadan. And on that note, I hand you over to Professor Osofisan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abulaje. We invite Emeritus Professor Femi Osofisan to make his response.
Thank you very much, Dapo, for that citation. Although I have to confess that the reception is not really good, so I can't hear most of it. I do hope that you can hear me though. I also, of course, send my appreciation even more profoundly to the members and the executive committee of AfTA, especially your president, Professor Khalid, who have thought me worthy for this award. Indeed, I find I'm in an illustrious company of achievers. All of the 5 other recipients for this year are names that have been long established as experts in both the practice and criticism of drama and theater in Africa and the Black world. By some happy coincidence too, a fact perhaps unknown to the organizers, all of the honorees, with the exception of Dr. Springler, are my personal friends, artists whose passion and commitment have been an invaluable source of inspiration for me over the years. I want to acknowledge publicly here for the first time, therefore, how through several interactions and intimate discussions at workshops, seminars, conferences, or through personal correspondence, they have shared with me valuable insights that have contributed immeasurably in the shaping of my work. Awards are always significant mementos in the life of the creative artist. They help to give confirmation and endorsement to one's chosen vocation. And particularly an award of this stature from eminent professionals helps to lend positive applause to the celebration of the artist's ego. But at the same time, however, we must always remember that as glamorous and desirable as they may be, awards are an ambiguous gift, because in their coronation of achievement also lies the danger of induced complacency, of a soporific of fulfillment that could lead dangerously to the stifling of the incentive to further striving. This is something we must struggle to resist. I don't know the opinion of my fellow awardees, but my feeling is that much work still lies ahead for us, that even more than what we may have accomplished already is a future simmering with the burden of several unanswered questions and uncharted explorations. Why do I feel this way? You undoubtedly want to know. The answer lies partly in the special role I have always assigned to art in the society. That along with the task of providing entertainment, art should also be an instrument of enlightenment. The scripts of drama should also be a beam of light projected into the confusing dark of both individual and collective life. This means that art should be a major factor, therefore, not only in the construction of personal morality, but also in the bigger decisions over social and political life. In post-colonial societies, especially, where considerable damage has been done to the psyche and mentality of the citizen, the enlightened artist cannot choose a stance of indifference to the processes needed for their people's retrieval. Indeed, this battle in the arena of identity and consciousness is a vital prerequisite to social and political liberation. One of the pleasantly sobering reminders from this award is the sudden awareness it gave me of the fact that it is 50 years now already since I became formally engaged with theater activity. it was in 1972 in Paris that, in response to the political traumas on our continent, I began to write the play that was later produced in Ibadan as The Catherine and the Song, and which launched my career in the theater world, first as a politically engaged artist, and secondly, as an avant-garde experimentalist in search of an authentic indigenous format of dramaturgy. All through these 50 years, these two features have not left my work. I continue to search for credible, autonomous techniques for our performances, an area in which I believe that I have achieved some measure of success to judge from the widespread popularity of the place. But I have never believed that this search can be independent of the simultaneous search for a happy, free, and egalitarian society underwritten by a system where the equitable distribution of resources is a sine qua non. This is where my despair swings on. Nothing so far shows that any of our countries in Africa is making progress towards becoming a modern democracy. In fact, to the contrary, despite all our work and all our writings, the political scene remains dismally retrogressive. Repressive and kleptomanic regimes and leaders cling to power everywhere, while the bulk of our people remain in dire poverty and squalor, and our erstwhile colonial powers continue to mine our resources to our detriment. It's a situation, therefore, where the committed artist needs a lot of hope and courage to continue his or her work. This is the interpretation I will give, therefore, to this award today, that it's an elixir of hope and a crucial boost in a season of anguish. A talisman to help us endure and keep the spirit of commitment alive. And I want to dedicate it to all the teachers and collaborators I've met in the course of my career. They come from all the continents, talents too numerous to mention, and from different institutions. And they include critics without whom no artist can develop. May this award be a challenge to spur us on to greater achievements for our people and our continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Osofisan, for that challenge to us. I now invite Khalid Walcott, who is going to be doing the citation for Eintou Springer.
Okay, good afternoon, all. Eintou Pearl Springer, actress, storyteller, poet, former poet laureate of Port of Spain and playwright, was born on November 24th, 1944, to Ida Marie Guerre Attlee and Gladstone Cornelius Attlee, in what she characterizes as the most beautiful place on the planet, the village of Santa Cruz on the twin island republic of Trinidad and Tobago. She traces her ancestry on her maternal side to that of the Guerre, the First Nations people of Venezuela on the South American continent, and on her paternal side to that of the Garifuna, African and Kalinago peoples of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Eintou won a government scholarship to St. George's College, the first co-educational high school in Trinidad and Tobago, where she had as her Latin master the legendary Guyanese-born actor Slade Hutchison. And it was there under his mentorship that her interest in the theater really started to take roots. On leaving high school, she, in her words, went directly to Derek Walcott's Trinidad Theater Workshop, and later, in June of 1970, when Slade Hutchison formed the Caribbean Theater Guild, deliberately geared towards creating a distinctive Caribbean theater matrix, she became an integral part of that initiative. Eintou is a founding member of the National Drama Association of Trinidad and Tobago and counts among her most treasured stage experiences that of performing in the presence of her beloved mentor, CLR James, his celebrated seminal work, Menti Ali. CLR James had entrusted her with the responsibility of transforming the novel to the stage, and with the award-winning production, he was well pleased. Eintou's Cambole, a 3-act play set in the 1881 Cambole riots in Trinidad, and Freedom Morning Come, set on August 1st, 1834, were published in Emancipation Moments 2010, compiled and edited by Roll Gibbons. Her We Transform Ourselves was written and performed for the opening of Trinidad and Tobago's Emancipation Village in 2009, and her In Harmony in Diversity was Trinidad and Tobago's offering at Carfesta in St. Kitts in 2000. She has authored an award-winning stage version of CLR James's Menti Ali, as well as an adaptation of Sam Selvon's A Brighter Sun, and her Herima, a play on the great Napuya warrior Cacique, is performed regularly at the First Peoples celebrations in Trinidad. Apart from her historical plays, much of her work is focused on addressing issues that are faced by women and girls. Her Shades of Aishi, which won a Cacique Award for Most Original Music, focuses on issues related to rape, incest, and domestic violence, and has toured extensively. A collection of 13 of her plays was published by Lexicon in early 2017. Eintou has traveled widely as a performance poet, including performances at the prestigious Edinburgh Festival, and has published 4 volumes of poetry: Out of the Shadows, 1986, Focus, 1991, Moving into the Light, 2000, and Loving the Skin I'm in 2005. Other publications include Godchild, 1998, and African Heritage Sites in Trinidad and Tobago in 2013. As a librarian, she has established the National Heritage Library of Trinidad and Tobago within the National Library and Information Service, and retired as its first director in 2003. As an activist, Eintou has served at the leadership level of NJAC, National Joint Action Committee, the organization which spearheaded the Black Power movement in the 1970s in Trinidad and Tobago. She was one of the artists who lent her involvement to the Maurice Bishop movement in Grenada. She was also a member of George Lamin's Committee of Intellectuals for Regional Sovereignty. She's also a founding member and cultural director of the Emancipation Support Committee of Trinidad and Tobago. Eintou has been a strong advocate for recognition and visibility of African spirituality. Her street pageant, Cambole, is performed annually at 4 a.m. on Carnival Friday and has become a seminal part of Trinidad and Tobago's Carnival. Among her many awards are the Trinidad and Tobago Hummingbird Silver Medal, a national award for her contribution to art and culture in Trinidad and Tobago, a Vanguard Award for her contribution to development of theater from the National Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and in 2018, the University of Trinidad and Tobago awarded her its Honorary Doctorate of Fine Arts. Eintou, who holds an MPhil from City University, London, was on Tuesday, February 1st, 2022, bestowed the honor of having a space named in acknowledgement of her contribution to the arts, culture, and the library service by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The Eintou Pearl Springer Reading Room, located on the 2nd floor of the Heritage Library National Library building. In 2022, in response to questions about her life and all the awards that have been bestowed upon her. Eintou is quoted as saying, "I feel one of the most significant contributions of the work has been to transform the national and the international perception that the great Trinidad Carnival is French, but that instead it is rooted in African traditions, spirituality, and emancipation." In acknowledgement of her contribution to the world of theatre, the African Theatre Association on this day, November 28th, 2022, is pleased to confer on Eintou Pearl Springer the designation of Honorary Member. Congratulations, Eintou.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Hakla Walcott. And I invite distinguished Honorary Eintou Pearl Springer to make a response.
There's a verse running through my head. It will not let me sleep, it drives me from my bed. It is a verse crying out against my invisibility, longing to testify to my humanity. And the verse stretches to a play, a poem, a story. Bon après-midi tout le monde. Comment est? Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? I deliberately say these words in Creole, the language of our brothers and sisters in Haiti, the mother of our emancipation. We must never, whenever we meet as African people, forget the contribution of Haiti to our emancipation and seek and pledge to do something to stop her continuing to pay for that emancipation. Good afternoon to the President of AfTA, Professor Kene Igweonu, members of AfTA Executive, especially Mr. Khalid. Walcott, thank you for that citation. My fellow honorees, I give pride and thanks to my ancestors. I still hear in my head the plaintive plantation song of my paternal grandfather, the stories, the sayings of my mother and uncles that gave me a deep love of the ancient wisdom and worldview carried in my genes and obeyed me into finding those stories, those songs. It has been a long journey from sitting on the back steps with my elders, soft rain falling, glinting silver on the many trees. There's a deep reservoir of ancestral memory that can be a rich source for the stirring of our creativity. I went from the cocoon of that family to a world in which everything I held dear was despised, looked down upon, from the color of my skin, the texture of my hair, the wonderful food I ate. The impact, the strength of that reservoir was enough to keep my sense of self intact. We cannot dismiss the role that mentorship takes in the shaping of our creativity. I have been blessed in my mentors, Slade Hopkinson, Derek Walcott, George Lamming, and of course, C.L.R. James. For me, I've learned from them, and I share, that writing must comprise context and content. It is not enough to love the sound of our own voice, but to absorb, negotiate, contemplate the thoughts of our thinkers or writers. For me, to some extent, apart from the names I've mentioned, it was Frantz Fanon, Malcolm X, Larry Constantine, whose book Calabar opened up to me the world of racism and enslavement and explained to me the context for the rejection of my Blackness. It was a long period of gestation before finding my own voice. And of course, my English teacher who nurtured my first efforts at creating poetry. Sitting at the feet of Walcott was my introduction to play creations. Hard lessons that have stood me in good stead. My brother Roald Gibbons gave me the confidence to support me in directing my plays. The journey to finding an appreciation of an African self in the midst of the unrelenting dominance of Eurocentric education has not been an easy one. The road to recognition, visibility, and respect for an African worldview continues to be an extremely difficult one. They say they close the door of no return, but through that door I have already come, bringing with me my essence, my secret me, that none can take away. My involvement in the Black Power movement was the beginning of the process to using my embryonic writing skills to rekindle the African self buried in my genes. But for me, despite the fact that we achieved a great deal, there seemed to me something missing. And I found that. I went back to CLR Black Jacobins and found it when he sent me on a search for my African spirituality. The voices in my head said, flee free from this place. Can't you feel the devil salivating, anticipating the season of your immortal soul? Flee from this place. Eternal damnation awaits you. The voices in my head question, who is this Shongo with his double-headed axe? This Ogun, 10 cutlasses of parade, this Orimela, this Eshu, those female devils, Oshuni and Monja, then the whip beat them out of you. Then holy baptism redeem you. Flee free from this place. Save your immortal soul. That terror made me understand in a very personal way the deliberate demonization of African spirituality and the depth of the damage done to the African self by enslavement and colonialization. It is an aspect of our beingness that I believe derives respect, derives investigation. My work with the Carnival, my play Kambule, which has unearthed and brought to public attention the fact that this festival, widely regarded as one of the greatest shows on earth, was not French, but rooted in African resistance, retention, ritual. All in all, my work has been to bring recognition, visibility, and respect to the African presence in my country, my region. It has been about subverting the deep, deep layers of self-rejection, of dissonance, bequeathed us by our recent history. I believe theater, poetry, or literature, or art forms are powerful catalysts for transformation. I believe my work to be about resistance, protests, taking the process from emancipation to reparation. It is about giving pride of place to our African heritage, to reintroduce the rituals that define our relationship with the universe and with each other. Our art cannot only be for entertainment, but must be geared, I believe, to rerouting us into ourselves. There's a fire raging in my being, waiting to lash out at all who would wish me to be unseen. It is a fire hot and wild, that will not be put out even when I die, for that fire burns for freedom. Thank you for this honor.
Thank you so much for that wonderful response. I now invite Dr. Perpetua Fobe, who is going to be reading the citation for Dr. James Gibbs.
Warm greetings to us all. I am honored to read the citation of Dr. James Gibbs for Honorary Membership 2022, African Theatre Association. Dr. James Gibbs was born in Wales and educated in the United Kingdom and the United States of America. He has been a leading scholar of African theatre and literature for over half a century. With degrees from the American University, Washington, D.C., M.A. 1967, the University of Bristol, B.A. 1965, M.A. Lit. 1972, and the University of Leeds, Ph.D. 1980. From 1968, he taught drama and literature at the universities in Ghana, Malawi, Nigeria, Belgium, and the UK before retiring from the University of West of England, Bristol, in 2007. At the age of 80, Dr. Gibbs is still an active and astute researcher, known to many as an insightful reader of Shoyinka's work with an encyclopedic knowledge that defies any handbook. He has also made significant contributions to scholarship and to live theater in Ghana, Malawi, and Nigeria. In addition to being a researcher, he has been a teacher and a practical man of the theater, so an actor, producer, and director. Among his publications is the groundbreaking Critical Perspectives on Wole Soyinka, published in 1980. He also published a monograph, Wole Soyinka, published by Macmillan, that appeared in 1986, the year in which, with K2 Cartwright and Henry Louis Gates Jr., he published Wole Soyinka, a bibliography of primary and secondary sources. Dr. Gibbs compiled 2 handbooks for African writers, published in 1986. The second with the Malawian poet Jack Mapanji, published by African Books Collectives in 1999. In 1993, he and Bert Lindfors edited a collection entitled Research on Wole Soyinka, published by African World Press. And with Kofi Anidowo, he edited a collection of essays on Ghanaian literature, theater, and film, Fontam From, published in 2000. His collection of essays on the Ghanaian theater, in Kin Essays on Ghanaian Theater, was published by Rodopi in 2009. That includes an account of the productions and performances of the Legon 7, a campus theater group that he founded and worked with from 1968 to 1971. It included several lifelong friends who went on to make major contributions to Ghanaians' cultural life. He also published a collection of plays, one by Malawian authors, and 2 study aids. His valuable bibliography of Ghanaian theater can be accessed freely online at the Jan Heinz Jan Library for African Literatures, hosted by the Johannes Gutenberg University here in Mainz, in Germany. He served as reviews editor for African Theater Today, and with fellow honorary Professor Dr. Femi Osofisan and Martin Bernheim, who was honored last year. He was one of the founding editors of the James Curry, Boydell, and Brewer African Theatre series from 1999 to 2020. He edited several volumes, including those on companies, 2008, and festivals, 2012. During November 2013, Bert Lindfors and Geoffrey Davis presented him with a first shrift they had edited entitled African Literatures and Beyond, published by Rodopi. Together with his family, he has been involved with various academic delivery schemes from which African college and university libraries have benefited. long before the decolonization of academia became part of the scholarly discourse, he saw it as a vital responsibility to counteract global inequalities in knowledge production and distribution between the global North and global South. His generous financial assistance has always been matched by an even greater generosity in spirit as mentor, advisor, living archive, and according to Christine Matke, sometimes as an agony uncle, to emerging and established scholars on the African continent and all over the world. With his continuous keen interest in African theater and his inquisitive, enthusiastic mind, Dr. Gibbs is an inspiration to us all. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. We now invite Dr. James Gibbs for his response.
Well, thank you. Thanks to Perpetual for those kind words. Thanks to the membership and office holders of AfTA for honoring me in this way. And thanks to all those on this call, both live and recorded, whom I have met in my African theatre journey. What a wonderful group of honorary members. Thank you so much for putting me in this elevated company. I'm acutely aware of my unworthiness. I would like to recall at this point all those who took me by the hand and pointed the way onto stages, those who encouraged me to imitate and improvise, those who thrust copies of plays into my hands saying, rehearse, rehearse, and then perform, perform. We have been asked to address significant issues, and in the few moments available to me, I will sketch two scenes and tell you about one person. All are linked by the letter P, and all resonate and challenge. First, two pictures, snapshots of remembered moments in the album marked African Theatre. I hope you will find them thought-provoking. I want to bring before you a moment in a production of an English version of Antigone by Sophocles. It is being presented in the open-air theatre at Chancellor College, Zomba, Malawi. The theatre has been constructed by students and enables us to perform under the Central African skies in the shadow of Zomba Plateau. The production is being staged under the draconian regulations controlling entertainment that are in force in Malawi under Hastings Banda. The script has been approved by the chairman of the censorship board, Dr. Tobias Banda, and permission has been obtained to perform in a particular place on a particular evening. Yes, the theatre is encumbered by rules, regulations, and requirements, but Dr. Tobias Banda has blind spots where the classics are concerned and does not know about the power of performance. He has given me permission to stage Antigone, and those who know the play will recall that Antigone defies the regulations imposed on Thebes. She buries her husband despite what Creon has commanded. Her fiancé, Creon's son Hymen, has the strength to stand up to tyranny, and he challenges his father. In the translation we were using, he says to Creon at one point, "A one-man state, what sort of a state is that?" Creon replies narcissistically, "Does not every state belong to its ruler?" And Hymen drives home his rejection of tyranny with, "You would be an excellent king on a desert island." When Hymen's defiance rings out in the Zomba night, the audience reacts as one with a sharp intake of breath. Those listening are rocked into recognition. The truth comes from an actor speaking under floodlights, and the audience realizes that they are, for once in their troubled, muzzled land, hearing truth being spoken to power. It's a thrilling example of the possibilities of political theatre and performance, something to reflect on. The second moment I want to share with you came much later in my career, when I was searching the past rather than shedding light on the present. The scene is set in the reading room of the National Archives, Cape Coast, Ghana. The papers of pioneering Gold Coast playwright Kobena Setchi have been delivered from the stack room to my desk. The files are thinner than I think they should be. And when I open them, I see that the paper has been rendered friable by the climate. Compositions from the 1930s and 40s threaten to disintegrate between my fingers. Contemplating this, I consider how fortunate we are that the text of Setchi's plays, The Blinkards, staged in 1916, was rescued from these files during the 70s by a Gambian researcher. However, contemplating the fragments of Setchi's writings that have survived, I wonder what is happening to the papers of other playwrights, some contemporary, some we have heard from on this recording. How are they being stored? What measures are being taken to safeguard them, to catalogue and to preserve them? The condition of the Setchi papers in Cape Coast Archive gives pause for much thought. In conclusion, leaving you with those P's, politics and preservation, I come to reflect on my life and more particularly on my marriage that was made in African theatre. I met Patience, yet another P, Patience Addo, when I was teaching in Ghana at the end of the 60s. Please note, Addo is quite a common Ghanaian name, and we cannot claim any relationship with the coach of the Ghana soccer team that in that theatre of dreams in Doha has brought such distinction to African footballers today. Patience was already an experienced woman of the theatre, an actor, stage manager, producer, wardrobe mistress, company manager, and budding playwright. For more than 50 years, Patience has been my love, my advisor, my support, and my companion in all things. We started with a theatre project at the University of Ghana, and we have worked on theatre projects in Malawi and Nigeria, as well as in the UK. I have learned that her instinct can be trusted, and over the years, she has modified my sensibility. Friends and colleagues, fellow creatives and fellow students, I feel greatly honored to be numbered among the honorary members of the African Theatre Association. And I know I have not made it thus far alone. Thank you all, and thank you to my wife.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbs, for that wonderful response. I now invite David Dravijan, who is going to be introducing last honoree for the day, Alougbine Dine.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good day to you all. Bonjour. Guten Tag. I am honored to read the citation of Monsieur Directeur Dine Alougbine, an honorary award conferred on him by the African Theatre Association. Mr. Alougbine not only has been working as a stage director, actor, scenographer in the Francophone Africa, West Africa, where he has built up an impressive cover of outstanding quality. He also has established a theatre school in his native Benin, which has set a standard right from its beginning 20 years ago, and of which he still is the artistic director. We got acquainted with Mr. Alougbine while traveling for the first time in Sub-Saharan Africa in 1999, and also renewed this acquaintance when he became director of the then International Theatre Festival in Benin, FITHEB, that's FITHEB. Since then, we have been following his career and his activities, and I am sure he can be considered one of the major positive driving forces for the theater practices in the region and beyond. He always succeeds in surprising his audiences as well as his co-professionals by his energy to find new ways of thinking and practicing theater. Often in spite of the difficult and precarious circumstances under which the work has to be undertaken, and under his aegis, a whole new generation of West African theater artists has been trained, a generation that is making its mark. In the world of Beninese theater, Alougbine Dine has no equal. To this day, he holds the record for the most play show in Benin. But that's not the only thing that makes him great. Benin was not his only playground, a dreamer and above a traveler. He saw the biggest stages in the continent. He died in the wool nomad, this Potonovian born to a Yoruba father and a Gon mother, is also a bridge thrower. It indeed mixes nationalities, regions, ethnic groups, languages, music, instruments, ages, authors. So many differences crossed and exchanged. We testify about him. Alougbine Dine lived 13 years in Central Africa and worked in all regions of Africa. He has traveled almost all the stages of the continent, as well as many theater festivals in Europe, and mainly the Avignon Festival. Ask the youngest actor of the theater in Benin. They will tell you how the work, the cause, and the lessons received from this great man that have shaped their arts and their being on stage. He is huge and tall, versatile artist, smiling man, discreet, charming on the edges. Alougbine Dine is a creator of another kind who never runs out of inspiration. The Burkinabe Emmanuel Sama says that he has forged a solid experience, nourished by the diversified approach to theoretical creation, and that he matures his talent on his feet like the best fruits. The man has already played more than 100 roles in the theater and in very varied registers. He signed multitudes of costumes and sets. He has staged more than 60 authors' texts. And finally, the man is known for his fantasies in staging. It has often been highly anticipated, and each time manages to create the unexpected. The last edition of the Benin International Theatre Festival, FITHEB, was once again a playground for him. More than 2,000 actors were on stage for the opening show. On the occasion, it distributed to each guest, according to the perception of the slave trade, a strong dose of emotion with a staging that will mark a milestone in the history of the theater. With him, talent and intelligence form a perfect duo. His work is very inspired and of an intoxicating quality. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Monsieur Directeur Dine Alougbine.
Thank you very much. We now invite Alougbine. You're muted. You want to unmute your mic?
Votre microphone, monsieur Dine, votre microphone.
C'est bon. Vous m'entendez?
Great.
C'est bon maintenant?
Oui, 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 oui.
Oui.
C'est bon.
Mesdames et messieurs, je suis très heureux de participer à la présente assise. Et je suis profondément ému et fier d'y participer avec toutes ces éminentes personnalités du monde du théâtre. Je vous salue tous. Je salue au passage le professeur Femi Osofisan, que je connais depuis très longtemps. Et mes félicitations et mes vives félicitations vraiment à l'Association africaine de théâtre dirigée par le professeur Kene. Merci à cette association. Vous savez, j'ai fondé cette école, l'École internationale du théâtre du Bénin, qui est sise à Alougbine, en même temps qu'un théâtre et aussi bien qu'une troupe permanente. Et tout ça, c'est pour tout simplement que les jeunes puissent avoir un cadre beaucoup plus propice à l'apprentissage théâtral. Mesdames et messieurs, mon rêve pour le théâtre en Afrique, c'est que notre théâtre, qu'on arrive à créer un théâtre qui nous ressemble. Un théâtre qui transcende les barrières linguistiques et douanières. Un théâtre qui puisse aller du Nigeria en passant par le Bénin, passant par le Togo jusqu'au Ghana. Un théâtre qui puisse partir du Congo en passant par le Cameroun, le Gabon, la Guinée équatoriale. Mon rêve, le voilà pour notre chère Afrique. Vive l'Association africaine du théâtre, vive le théâtre en Afrique et vive l'Afrique en marche. Je vous remercie. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, thank you very much. Just give me a minute to find this. Okay, so we've come to the end of this ceremony. But before we go, in a minute, I'm going to ask everyone to unmute and unmute their screen, unmute their microphones, and just give an ovation to our distinguished honorees. But before then, just wanted to remind everyone why we do this award. So the title of Honorary Member of the African Theatre Association is enshrined in the AfTA Constitution and is awarded at the discretion of the Executive Committee of AfTA to outstanding individuals who have made a significant and sustained contribution to the advancement of African theatre and performance scholarship, practice, or culture. And now it's now my honor and privilege as the president of the association to welcome all our distinguished honorees to the honorary membership of the African Theatre Association. And by your membership, you are entitled to all the rights and privileges of membership of African Theatre Association. Our distinguished honorees also serve as our global ambassadors. And as part of the ambassadorial roles, we will be calling on you from time to time to advise us on professional matters related to the association, to advise us on fundraising activities and other initiatives to help advance the interest of the association. With that, I say a big welcome to the AfTA family as honorary members, and I now invite everyone on the call to unmute their microphones and give a big hand clap and welcome.
Congratulations, everyone.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Well done.
Congratulations.